Hi everyone, in this video you can learn on how to actually install Visual Studio 2019 in your PC. So first of all, of course you need to get the installer from the either from the Microsoft Azure or from the Microsoft website. So the versions of Visual Studio that I'm going to use is the community versions of 2019. So this is the installer that I've actually downloaded from the Microsoft website, which is a free version for the study purposes. So I will double click on the installer, then after a certain few process, okay, I'm sure that you're going to come into this page. So in this page, you will need to select the components that you want to install. So the components that I select to install in order to have a proper Visual Studio, I select Python development, .NET desktop development, Universal Windows platform development, and desktop development with C++. So if let's say you have actually select all the components, the total space required, okay, it would be larger. So since I only select these 4 components that I will only need it for my study purposes, so the total space required is actually only 11.84 GB. So make sure that, okay, if you need some of the components that you want, that you think that you're going to use it in the future, so you can just go ahead, or you'll have enough PC space, you can also go ahead and install all the components that you want. So now we assume that, okay, the Visual Studio 2019 is already installed in your PC. So we start up, and now we are trying to create a project. So this project is actually for you to have a coding panels so that you can actually type your code and run the project. So there are actually a few selections over here. So to be simple, I will just continue without code. Then, okay, this window will actually pops up. So by following the practical one, the instructions says that first thing, if you want to actually create a project, so you go to the file and go to the new and select project. So from here, okay, this window is going to pop up. So which one that you need to choose? Of course, you go to the languages, you choose C++, and all platforms and all projects type. The items that you will select is actually the empty project. So of course, you will need, okay, you may actually need others, but for now you just create an empty project and click next. So for each of these projects, you can give a name. So I'm going to start my practical one. So I give my project name as the practical one. Okay, and each of these projects you're going to store in one folder. So which folder that I'm going to store? So if let's say I want to store in the folder on my desktops, which is called as practical, so I will select that folder. Then we click create. So this practical one, okay, that will be created in the folder on my desktop, which is called practical. So you can see this is the practical folder that I store my project, which is practical one. So in here, okay, my practical is being created. Okay, so now I need to type my code. So what I need to do is I go to my practical one, I right click on it, and I go to the add and add new item. So in this new item, I have this C++ file.cpp header file and also class. So in the current subject, you just only need this .cpp file. And you can give the name. So let's say I give the name as practical 1. Then I add over here. Then I have my coding panels over here. Now I try to type something so that I can run my code. Okay, so this is the code that I've actually typed. So now if let's say I click a save. So this one, okay, it will be saved in the project folder. If let's say you forget that which folder that you save your project in. So what you can do, how you can actually trace back the folder. You can go to your practical 1, right click, and there's a selections for you saying that open folder in File Explorer. So click on the selections. Then you can see in this folder you have your practical1.cpp that you have actually created in the coding panel. So now let's say I built the solution. So if there is no error in my project, in the codes that I've actually typed, it will say that I have actually succeeded. So if let's say, okay, I try to remove one of the semicolons in the project, then I build my solutions. You can see that the error message that has been pop up. So if let's say I insist to run the program, so what happened? So if I insist to run the program, the Visual Studio will pop up the message saying that there's an error, build errors. Would you like to continue and run the last successful build? Well, of course, you can choose yes, but it says that it will only run the last successful build. But I don't want to run the last successful build, so I just click no. So when I click no, you can see that there's an error message over here. So if you read the error message properly, it says that it is actually expecting a semicolon, expected semicolon. So you can double click on the error and it will show to you that the errors, it is actually in line number 9. So of course, it is actually, we know that since the message given you is actually expected a semicolon, which means that we have actually missed a semicolon. So when we miss a semicolon, you have to check back where do you actually miss the semicolon. So obviously here you know that it's actually line 7, so you add in the semicolon. And another way on how do you actually detect the errors in your code is actually, you can see after I remove the semicolon, immediately there's a red curly line that's been pop up in under the system. So when these red curly lines pop up, so we also know that there's an error that has actually happened in the code. So now I put back the semicolon and I build my solutions. So it says that it's actually succeeded. So it means that there's no error. I can run my code. Okay. So this is actually one of the important things that you need to know. Another thing is that, so let's say I have actually few lines. Okay, we have actually 4 lines that is being typed over here. So if let's say I'm trying to separate out into exercise 1, okay, and exercise 2. So we assume that this one, okay, is from exercise 1 and this one is actually from exercise 2. So of course, okay, when I run my code, you can see that hello world, good morning, good evening, UCC 104 is the best, yay, it's actually been pop up in this command prompt. But if let's say I don't want my exercise 1 to pop up, so what can I do? I can actually comment out this part of the code. So I can actually select, okay, this whole part, and I go to the buttons over here. So you can see when I hover to this button, it says that comment out the selected lines. So I just click on it. You notice that when I click on it, there will be a double slash in front of the code that I actually type. So which means that these 2 lines is actually being commented out. When a code is being commented out, the compilers will not run the code that has been commented out. So if now I run the code again, so you can see hello world, good morning is actually not pop up in the command prompt window. It's only good evening and UCCD is the best, yay, it's been pop up. So now let's say I want to release the command. So how can I release the command? I just go to the buttons besides the command, out the selected lines, and I uncommand. So now these 2 lines will appear again. So now if let's say I turn run, and the message is being displayed in the command prompt window. So there's also another way to actually comment out. So how is that you can use slash star and slash star and slash to actually end the command. Slash star is to start the part where you want to start the command out, and star slash is the part where you will end the command. It is actually the same as you put the slash into every line of the code. Then you can see hello world, good morning is actually being commented out. Alright, so this is actually one of the important things that you need to know also. And the next thing that you will need to know is actually the .cpp file. Okay, so basically this is a .cpp file that you have actually created. So you can see all the codes that you have typed in the .cpp file. You can actually get it in the text file. So this is the .cpp file. I right click and then I open with the notepad. So you can see this is all the codes that you have typed. Then when I open the notepad, you can see all the code. So if now let's say I move this .cpp file, because I'm trying to back up this whole project. So how can I actually do the backup? So I can just, copy this .cpp file and put it into another folder. So let's say we select the folder and we create a backup folder over here, and I just put it over here. And all the codes that I have it in my .cpp file is now in my backup folder. So in this backup folder, same thing, I also open with a notepad, and this is my code. So if let's say, okay, I've changed something in here. So, okay, this is the message that I typed. So if now let's say I remove this and I run the code. So if we go to the .cpp file of your practical one and we open with the notepad, of course, this one will actually change. So if let's say I cannot remember what I've typed for my exercise 1 and I want to retrieve it back. So what can I do? So luckily, okay, just now I've actually backed up my .cpp file. So now I can actually open back using the notepad and copy everything code in this backup practical1.cpp into my coding panel. So I get back my exercise 1. So remember is that, okay, .cpp file is the important file in your project. The only things that, okay, if let's say you want to backup, you can backup only the .cpp because everything, the code is over here. So if let's say I have another project .cpp file that I want to open, what can I do is that I can just open the .cpp file and copy the code in the .cpp file and paste it. So let's say I have another practical one in my desktop. Okay, this is the .cpp file that I have in my practical one folder, and this is the source.cpp. Okay, this one is actually different from the one that we have actually created. So now if let's say I open with Notepad and I copy the code over here and paste it in the practical1.cpp that we have actually created. So I run the code. And I'm able to run it. So now if I go to the folder and I open my .cpp with Notepad, so you can see all the codes that has actually been changed. Right, this is one of the important things that you need to know. Okay, and another things that you need to know is that you need to know where your .exe file has been stored. You can go to your project folder, then you go back, okay, one folder level up before the .cpp, and you can see over here we have debug and we have the solution file. So now we click into the debug folder. So in this debug folder, we have this practical1.exe. So if I double click on this practical1.exe, I have the outputs, which is exactly the same as the outputs that I typed in my coding panel. So now, if let's say I've changed something in my coding panel, let's say I release the command and I only save it, I'm not running it. So what happened? If I click on the exe, nothing happened. Okay, nothing happens. But if let's say I run the code again, so now you can see hello world, good morning, good evening, UCCD 104 is the best. Yay, is actually pop up in this command prompt window. So now if we go back to the .exe and we double click to open this .exe file again. So what happened? You can see this hello world, good morning, good evening, and UCCD 104 is the best message is been displayed, okay, in this command prompt window. So which means that, okay, the codes that you actually run in this coding panel, everything will be reflected in your practical1.exe. Now, why do we need this practical1.exe? Is this .exe enable for you to open your outputs, okay, anywhere in any PCs. So if let's say I copy this practical1.exe, copy, and I put it on the desktop. So this is my practical1.exe. So this is actually the outputs that I want. So I can just double click and it will display it. But of course, so let's say you have actually do your assignments and everything, and it's actually quite troublesome if you just you submit this whole folder. What you can do is that you can just only submit your .cpp and also this .exe. But of course, you must ensure that this .exe file is actually exactly the same as the codes in the coding panel. Why? It's because, okay, if let's say now I've actually paste my practical1.exe on the desktops, right? So now when I do my exercise or when I do my assignments, now I want to remove these two lines. So this is actually basically my final output. Okay, now if let's say I did not actually update the practical1.exe on my desktops and I double click. So of course, okay, it will come up with the previous one. So remember that, okay, once you've actually, do something on your practical1.cpp, so make sure that you actually update your exe to be the last outputs that you actually want for your practical1.exe. So this is actually one of the important things that you need to take note. And then what do you have? Okay, another tips is, let's say you cannot find your solution explorer in your Visual Studio window over here. So it's actually not over here. You can see it is actually not over here after I click. So it is gone. So how can you actually get your Solutions Explorer back? Go to the View and click on this Solution Explorer. Then spin on it. So you can get your Solutions Explorer over here. So you can see all this, okay, it is appeared on your Visual Studio window. And then I guess that's all the things that you need to know before you actually start your practical. So thank you.